Episode 1 of Paradise begins with Agent Xavier Collins, who is seen in his grand residence with his 2 children. However, there's a sense of unease about him. Despite this, we quickly learn that he is a special agent assigned to protect the President of the United States. When he checks on President Cal Bradford in his room, he discovers that he's dead. A flashback then takes us to Collins' first encounter with Bradford. Despite the president's subtle racism, Collins finds himself drawn to Bradford's charismatic directness and ultimately accepts the role of his protector. Returning to the present, Collins surveys the crime scene and realises that Bradford's tablet has been stolen. Another flashback reveals that Bradford had a strained relationship with his wife, and they had planned to separate as soon as his term ended. Breaking protocol, Collins calls in his trusted colleague Billy and orders an immediate lockdown. The 2 agents begin sweeping the area for evidence while Collins examines the CCTV footage. Suspiciously, it turns out that Collins was the last person to see the president alive. Furthermore, Collins' superior, Bradshaw, who was romantically involved with Special Agent Robinson, had also met with a high-ranking official known as Samantha, or Sinatra, as she's referred to here. Another flashback shows Collins taking a bullet for Bradford in the past, highlighting their once close relationship. However, tensions had arisen between them, particularly regarding Collins' wife, leading to a falling out. Meanwhile, agents Billy and Jane appear to be hiding something. CCTV footage reveals that Billy had fallen asleep while on duty. Just before the president's murder, the security feed experienced a blackout, and Billy only woke up long after the suspect had presumably escaped through the balcony. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Collins declares a code red, bringing all key stakeholders to the president's residence. He's questioned about his last conversation with Bradford, leading to yet another flashback, one that reveals their fallout was linked to Collins' wife. As the timeline shifts further back, we see Bradford and Sinatra entrusting Collins with top secret information, the very data that's now stored on the now stolen tablet. They reveal that an impending catastrophe threatens the planet. But back in the present, Collins races home, determined to uncover Bradford's killer. In a shocking twist though, we learn that the city in which Collins and the others reside in is actually an underground metropolis, a refuge built following a devastating apocalypse, which is where episode 1 comes to an end. Episode 2 of Paradise begins 12 years before the present timeline, where Samantha, also known as Sinatra, gathers the brightest minds in the world. Here we learn that she has been excavating an underground city, though the reason behind it remains unclear. In the present, Collins picks up one of Bradshaw's cigarettes and finds a 6-digit number written on it. We then get a glimpse of the city, which appears to be just like any other, an unremarkable, ordinary place. As Samantha writes a eulogy for Bradshaw, we discover that she was the world's richest self-made woman. She met her husband at a pub, and the 2 shared a loving relationship until their eldest son fell chronically ill. Meanwhile, Collins is taken in for interrogation, as he was the last person to see Bradshaw alive. Samantha and a psychologist by the name of Dr. Gabriella Tarabi observed the session. In the midst of the questioning, Gabriella takes over and asks Collins whether he secretly resented Bradshaw. She discreetly shows him her palm, where "say yes" is written. Collins hesitates but ultimately agrees. Gabriella then argues that his confession suggests that he could not be a suspect, and Samantha concurs. Collins is later placed on leave. Through a series of flashbacks that ensue after, we see that Samantha struggled to cope with her son's chronic illness. During this time, she was introduced to Gabriella, an expert in grief, who helped her process the situation. Elsewhere, residents gather at the town hall, where the leaders announce that Bradshaw's death was due to natural causes and swear in a new president. Meanwhile, Presley, Collins' eldest daughter, skips the town hall meeting and follows Bradshaw's son to the library. There, he confesses his regret over a fight he had with his father just before his death. Additional flashbacks reveal that Samantha and Bradshaw once attended a talk about an impending catastrophe that could wipe out the world. Samantha became deeply interested in the subject and sought out the lecturer for more information. Back in the present, Collins confides in Billy that he doesn't trust Samantha. Meanwhile, young Bradshaw shows Presley the planes they had arrived in the city on. The episode then ends with a poignant moment. In another flashback, Samantha asks her dying son what heaven looks like to him. His response? Just like here, but with more horse rides. Hence, the abundance of horses throughout the underground town. Episode 3 of Paradise begins with Collins meeting Gabriella to question her about why she told him to say yes during the interrogation. Gabriella is initially unwilling to talk, but after some prodding, she takes him out to show him the ways in which she helped make the city feel ordinary. She reveals that she had been hired to help build a new community for people stricken with grief. However, before she reveals any further information, she insists that she needs to know more about Collins than just what's in his file, and asks him to open up about his relationship with his father. Collins remains reluctant at first, struggling to talk about his past. Eventually he does open up, revealing that his father had been a pilot, and he initially trained to follow in his footsteps. However, due to poor eyesight, he had to abandon that path and instead transitioned into the Secret Service. It was during this time that he learned his father had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, but had refused to leave his post as a pilot. Concerned, Collins took matters into his own hands and submitted his father's retirement forms without his consent, which led to a major rift between them. In another revelation, we learn that Collins' wife had been in a different city when the evacuation took place, and Bradshaw made no effort to get her on board the plane, leaving her behind to die. This deep personal betrayal became the core reason for the falling out between Collins and Bradshaw. Meanwhile, Samantha and Agent Robinson attend Bradshaw's autopsy, where they find that he had been struck on the head with a sharp object. In response, they decide to track the digital fingerprint of the person suspected of shutting down the CCTV system around the time of his death. Elsewhere, we find that Agent Billy and Grace are in a secret relationship, and they appear to be hiding something. It doesn't take long before they're caught, but when questioned, Grace provides an explanation. She claims that because they're all living in an underground city, there were times when she and Billy would disable the CCTV, sometimes to take naps, other times to play Bradshaw's video games. Whether this excuse is a truth or a cover-up remains uncertain right now. As the episode progresses though, Gabriella and Collins end up at her house, where we learn that Gabriella had played a key role in selecting who would be allowed to live in the city. As their conversation takes a more personal turn, they end up kissing and sleeping together. However, after their intimate moment, Gabriella drops a big bombshell. Bradshaw had asked her to tell Collins that Billy is dangerous. Billy then pulls up near Collins' house where Presley watches the street, wondering where her father has been, which is where episode 3 of Paradise comes to an end. Episode 4 of Paradise opens with a look into Billy Pace's past. He grew up in the Wild West under the control of his overbearing, domineering uncle. When his uncle tried to harm his dog, Billy shot the man to protect his pet. This act set him on a dark path, spending most of his life in prison, where he became increasingly aggressive and dangerous. Eventually, a mercenary freed him, recruiting him to become a ruthless killing machine. Jumping to the present, Collins leaves Gabriella's house and briefly stops by his own before heading to Billy's. As he digs through Billy's file, he uncovers details about his prison stay and past crimes. At this point, he recalls his first encounter with Billy when they were preparing to leave for Paradise. Despite his violent history, Billy had once confided in Collins about his struggles in the old world and how he finally felt normal in this new one. Over time, Billy and Collins became close friends, to the extent that Collins' children began calling Billy Uncle. While Collins examines the files, Robinson notices him. Meanwhile, at the carnival, Collins continues his search for Billy. In a flashback, we see how Collins struggled with the uncertainty of life beyond Paradise, even as the president assured everyone that there was no sign of life outside. To bring solace to the bereaved, the president sent 4 scientists to assess the outside world's condition. Collins eventually confronts Billy, but soon realizes he isn't the one who killed the president. Billy passionately argues that he loves Collins' kids too much to ever harm them. However, another shocking truth emerges here. Billy was part of a mission to eliminate the surveyors sent outside Paradise. The orders had come directly from Sinatra, who wanted to prevent anyone from leaving. Billy later confronts Sinatra, threatening her to stay away from Collins and his children, whom he considers his family. However, Sinatra retaliates, warning him that she could expose his past or send another assassin to kill him. Elsewhere, Billy resolves to tell Collins everything the next day. That night, he returns home to celebrate with Jane, his lover. But just as the celebrations begin, he suddenly collapses. It's then revealed that Jane was the second assassin, working for Sinatra all along. She stages his death, ensuring that Paradise remains under Sinatra's control, which is where episode 4 of Paradise comes to an end. Episode 5 of Paradise begins in 1997, where Cal expresses his desire to become a high school teacher to his billionaire father. His father promptly rejects the idea, ordering him to pursue a career in politics instead. Fast forward to the day of Cal's funeral, and we see glimpses of his turbulent relationships, both with his father, who considered him a coward, and with his son, who blamed him for staying complicit in keeping the truth about the end of the world hidden from the public. A flashback reveals that, unlike Robinson, Cal viewed their relationship as an illicit affair. He also makes a passing comment about how they could be arms inside of paradise, hinting at something deeper. Meanwhile, Collins and Jane visit Billy's house, only to find him dead. Jane immediately drops her usual facade, switching into the role of a grieving partner. In another flashback though, we see Cal discovering a video file on his tablet titled First Transmission. However, despite being the president, he is denied access to it. Interestingly though, when he uses his father's palm to unlock the file, he gains access. The recovered videos and audio recordings reveal that a surface expedition team had found a woman and was pushing to bring her back into paradise, directly defying Sinatra's final orders. In response, Sinatra forces Billy to kill them all. Cal documents the details in his diary and creates a music mixtape for his son, hiding the information within. He also visits Gabriella, urging her to warn Collins that Billy is dangerous. That day, after finally taking a stand against injustice, just as his son had wanted, Cal confronts Sinatra about her role in eliminating the expedition team. He tells her that he intends to reveal the truth and wants to bring survivors to paradise. Later, we learn that Billy's death had been staged as a suicide, but Collins is convinced that Sinatra is behind it. Robinson suggests that they should take Sinatra down, but in another revelation, we discover that Cal had disclosed the location of hidden weapons to someone on the very day he was killed. That night, he scribbles a sequence of numbers onto a cigarette. In the present, Collins informs her daughter about Billy's death and tells her to gather her brother and their backpacks. It's then revealed that she has Cal's tablet in her possession. Collins' neighbour turns out to be a tech expert, and she asks him for a favour. We then discover that Sinatra had placed a surveillance camera right outside Collins' house, just as Collins himself had expected. The episode then ends on a chilling note, as the pixelated sky displays the words, "They're lying to you." Episode 6 of Paradise begins with a flashback of Collins and his wife Terry at their daughter's school. We meet Terry for the first time and learn that it was the day she was leaving for Atlanta. In the present, the warning in the sky remains unchanged into the next day. Sinatra finds that she cannot disable the writing since her engineers are locked out of the system. Elsewhere though, Collins' neighbour and his children are placed in a safe house. Meanwhile, Sinatra calls Gabriella for help in uncovering Collins' plans. Gabriella discovers that Sinatra has been spying on her and knows about her one-time fling with Collins. Gabriella then meets with Collins, who tells her he's coming for Sinatra as he breaks off his wristband. Robinson and her team retrieve the hidden weapons in Paradise not long after. Sinatra finds all the rebels offline and immediately sends a team to check on the weapons, only to discover that they're missing. Collins and Robinson gather their most trusted allies to form a rebel team, but just as Collins considers whether they should contact Jane or not, believing her to be loyal, Sinatra orders Jane to find Collins. Meanwhile, Presley leaves the safe house to find Cal's son Jeremy. We learn that Presley used to join the security team in playing games at Cal's house. On the night of his murder, she found his tablet, took it and left, hoping to uncover information about her mother. Jeremy asks his grandfather to unlock the tablet, which he does. Collins and his team threaten to expose Sinatra. Now, earlier on, Gabriella had convinced Sinatra not to shut down the sky, as doing so would disrupt the illusion of normalcy for the people. However, under pressure, Sinatra orders the system to be shut down and rebooted, plunging Paradise into complete darkness. She and Gabriella then leave headquarters while Jane keeps tabs on Jeremy to track down Collins. Jane finds Presley there and convinces her to leave with her, using Billy's death as an excuse. Collins' team then surrounds the safe house where all the important officials, except Sinatra, are located. Collins follows Sinatra and finds that Gabriella had tipped her off. Gabriella encourages Collins to talk to Sinatra, which he does. The episode then ends with Sinatra revealing that Terry is very much alive and that she can help Collins find her if he stops his operations. Episode 7 of Paradise begins with a flashback to the Cuban Missile Crisis, highlighting how one man's decision altered history and prevented global catastrophe. In the present, Collins holds Sinatra at gunpoint when she drops a shocking revelation: Terry is alive. The episode then takes us into another flashback detailing how the world-ending catastrophe actually unfolded. A massive seismic event under Antarctica triggered a devastating tsunami, throwing the White House into chaos. High-ranking military officials and government leaders gathered, debating whether to proceed with their emergency plan. Ultimately, they vote in favour of it. Meanwhile, Cal delivers a public broadcast attempting to maintain order as panic spreads. At the same time, Collins desperately tries to contact Terry. Seeking help, he approaches Cal, who in turn consults an officer. They manage to find a route for Terry to reach the military air base in Atlanta. However, as news of worldwide destruction spreads, other nations launch missiles in an attempt to protect themselves. As the White House prepares for evacuation, Cal notices an elderly janitor, who, despite the unfolding chaos, remains hopeful that humanity will persevere as it has in the past. This moment then shifts Cal's perspective as he realises people deserve to know the truth so they can say their final goodbyes. Acting on this conviction, he orders an emergency broadcast revealing the full extent of the catastrophe. The consequences are, as you may expect, immediate. Riots break out and enraged civilians storm the area, demanding answers and lashing out over their grim fate. Collins and the security team take up arms, firing to clear a path for Cal's safe escape. As they board the evacuation plane under heavy fire, Robinson stays behind, ensuring their departure. On board, Collins realises that Cal knew Terry wouldn't make it to the bunker, but chose not to warn him. Furious, Collins then confronts him, but Cal urges him to focus on survival for the sake of his children. As the crisis worsens, military leaders suggest launching a nuclear attack to clear a safe passage to the bunker. If the incoming missiles hit them amidst the already treacherous conditions, their survival would be impossible. Cal acknowledges the logic, but instead of launching an attack, he retreats to his quarters and executes an alternate plan. A global shutdown of all signals and communications, effectively disabling missile systems. Sinatra strongly opposes the move, arguing that they need operational communication to sustain themselves inside the bunker. Cal, unwavering in his belief that humanity deserves a choice, has her removed. He then activates the shutdown code, successfully disabling some missiles. However, Collins watches in horror as one missile remains active and heads straight for Atlanta. As the connection with Terry cuts out, the two exchange their final goodbyes. Back in the present, Collins recounts to Sinatra how he saw the bomb hit Atlanta. However, Sinatra counters by revealing the deactivation code's effect. She plays a radio transmission of Terry's voice, confirming she is very much alive and searching for Collins. Furthermore, Sinatra has him called to verify that Presley is no longer in the safe house. She then gives him an ultimatum. If he wants to keep his family safe, he must fix everything. And the episode then ends with Collins lowering his gun. Episode 8 of Paradise begins its finale with a flashback to when the bunker was being constructed. We meet the Paradise project manager, Ian Merrigan, who gradually became close to the construction site workers. Their happy working days come to an end though when Ian discovers toxic rocks at the site, which start affecting the workers' health. He pleads with management to get them out, but he's ordered to continue working regardless. This ultimately leads to the deterioration of his co-workers' health, prompting Ian to attempt an assassination on Cal, though Collins takes the hit for him. In the present, Sinatra plays a recording of Terry searching for her family. She threatens Collins with Presley and demands that he restore order. She also informs him that Cal's murderer must have come from outside, as their DNA did not match anyone living in Paradise. Collins speaks to Robinson and arranges for all the VIPs to be freed. Meanwhile, an announcement is made about Cal's murder. Sinatra contacts Jane, ordering her to kill Presley to keep the lid on. In exchange, Jane asks for one of Cal's video games, but Sinatra brushes her off, leading Jane to cut the call. Elsewhere, Collins revisits Cal's house and finds a mixtape Cal had made for Jeremy. He then heads to the library, searching for anything connected to Cal, and notices numbers written on the books. Remembering the number Cal had written on a cigarette, he finds the book containing transcriptions of confidential conversations from Cal's tablet. At this moment, the librarian, Trent, attacks Collins. It's later revealed that Trent is actually Ian, who had escaped from Colorado prison, disguised himself as military personnel, killed the real Trent and his wife, picked up another woman to pose as his wife, and infiltrated the bunker. He had remained undercover until Cal arrived at the library, reminding him of his initial mission. Ian then broke into Cal's room through the balcony and killed him by striking him on the head, though not before Cal identified the cigarette packet. Ian then escapes with the book. Meanwhile, Robinson convinces Gabriella to check the psychological records of all residents who settled in Paradise to identify potential dangers. They discover that Maggie, the waitstaff at the diner, is actually Michelle Meredith, the woman who arrived with Ian. She reveals Ian's true identity and Robinson rushes to the library, where he finds Collins bound. The two pursue Ian, who climbs to the top of the system and jumps from there. Later, Collins visits Sinatra and reports Ian's involvement. In response, Sinatra tells him she had to keep the lid on regarding Presley. When Collins presses her for answers about his daughter, it's implied that Presley has been killed, as Jane had sent a message stating the problem was eliminated. Collins retrieves his hidden gun, shoots Sinatra's bodyguards, and is about to kill her when Jane intervenes, shooting Sinatra near the neck but ensuring she survived. Jane then reveals to Collins that Presley is actually safe with her. And after Collins leaves, it's revealed that Jane spared Presley because Sinatra had refused her request for the game. Eventually, Collins reunites with his children and prepares to head to the surface to find Terry and the other survivors. Meanwhile, Jeremy finds new purpose in educating the residents about Cal's murder and the confidential details from Cal's tablet, which reveal the existence of survivors outside. With Sinatra hospitalized and chaos erupting among the political heads of the bunker, episode 8 of Paradise leaves things on a chaotically charged cliffhanger. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.